Hey guys, what's happening? And welcome back to the Level Up. This is episode number 5, and it's going to be a little bit of a special episode, so to speak, because I'm not really going to talk about myself. I'm not really going to run it as a traditional Level Up episode, and it's also going to be going out on both YouTube and the member site, just purely because I'd like a lot of people to see this. And obviously, I'm going to be talking about people that perhaps are not members on the site, and I'd like them to sort of see my opinions and essentially just talk about what I want to talk about in this episode. So this episode is going to be all about the past weekend, which was the awesome BNBF British Finals in Scotland, Perth. And I'm going to be covering majoritively, the focus is going to be upon my clients and their results and how I feel like the weekend went. Talking a little bit about their individual peaks and what I did with specific individuals to obviously make things work and put them on stage looking their absolute best. And yeah, I just want to get into things, and obviously I'll share some sort of photos and recaps of the actual weekend itself alongside me chatting away. So you're not going to be looking at me for the whole 15-20 minutes of this video. It's going to be interluded with some photos of my clients and videos of the day. So obviously travelled up to Scotland on the Saturday, travelled up with Jack and Molly. So we sort of made sure that we were all travelling together just because we're all in the same place accommodation wise, and it just made sense because we were hiring the same car, etc. So it just made things easier for us all travelling up as a bunch. All of my other clients coming from different locations, took different flights, and some stayed in Airbnbs, some stayed in the same hotel as me, Jack and Molly. But most of us were all together, so it was a really good sort of place and a hub for me to keep checking up on people and make sure everything was going super, super well. So in terms of the clients I actually had in the show, so I'll roll through each client, discuss sort of how I felt they looked, how I felt they performed, a little bit on their peaks, and then obviously go into sort of the actual show itself. So first up, we had Simon, who had qualified at the Northern show, so the last qualifier of the season for the BNBF, which made him sort of kind of on the back foot a little bit in the sense that he's had a peak for the Northern, then a peak for the UK FBA Heart of England, and then a peak for the UK and the BNBF British Finals. So he was on like back-to-back peaks. Simon had had quite a lot of external pressure and stress going on in his own life as well at the time of these shows, and it's shown in his look a little bit. And you know, it didn't take away really from his placing, because I feel like him as an athlete, and this is something that I'm big on, I think I might have mentioned it in my last Level Up episode, how it's really important to just be honest with people, be honest with what potentially they're going to achieve and what they're going to get out of the year. Like every time I take on board a new client, I'm like, what do you want to get out of this year? Like, what do you want to achieve? And at the start, you know, I set some goals for Simon that were probably a little bit higher than what he had expected, and then he set some goals, and we ended up sort of hitting in between those two goals, which is perfect. And I think that honest reality with people, but also pushing them to the highest level that they can achieve, is what you're meant to be as a coach. It's like taking people that bit further, but also just being very, very honest with what they can achieve, and not just saying, oh, you're going to win, you're going to win, you're going to win, because that puts a crazy amount of external pressure on the client. And when they don't win, they are shattered, they're broken. And unfortunately, that's a large part down to the pressure that they've been put under. So I'm very careful with how I say things and how I word things when I'm setting out client goals at the beginning of the season. So for Simon, he'd already achieved his main goal, which was to qualify for a British final in ideally both federations, and he's already done that. He'll be doing the UK FBA finals in 2 weeks' time. So Simon's peak was kind of quite moderate in the sense that we're obviously coming off the back of the UK, the FBA Heart of England. We brought him down to a new baseline body weight and then began to work up his food again at the back end of the week. Digestion took a little bit of a hit for Simon, I think, again, primarily down to stress, travel, and other extraneous factors that played a role. But his look was still very good, in my opinion, for him. And it wasn't good enough for a top 5 finish in this kind of lineup at this stage for him. And it's a shame, because I think that his physique will carry him to that kind of placing in the future. I don't know exactly what direction we're going to head post-show, but I think his body certainly needs a break, because he's dieted for the most part of last year, he's dieted for the majority of this year, and his body just needs some time out. But he will definitely be trying to and continuing to get better for the UKDFBA finals. It was a very fair judgment on the day. There was no unfair judging in my eyes from what I saw of the entire day. I thought the judging was fantastic. Obviously, it's always biased. So, if you have a certain individual that you want placing higher, of course, you're going to think, it's the judging. It's not. There's a panel of judges and they're all making decisions based on the criteria for the class. And everyone is entitled to their opinion. It's a subjective sport. But yeah, the novice class was very, very tough. And, the guy who won both of Simon's qualifiers came fifth in the class. So, that just shows the standard of the class. You go in winning a qualifying, come fifth at the finals. So that moves me on nicely to Dan, who was in the lightweight class. Dan was unfortunately a little bit sick leading up to the show. So he caught a bit of a cold, and I think he caught that midweek in his peak. So kind of will have affected his look. Without lying, it will have affected his look a little bit. And again, obviously, we just made sure that any carbohydrate load was really carefully monitored, and that any sort of extracellular fluid that was gathered, we monitored as to whether that was coming from the illness or coming from carb loading, or blurring his look at all, blurring any detail. And to be honest, I think we did the best we could have done, and the look was really, really good. But some things that in a first-time competitor always needs to be worked on is stage presence and posing. And don't get me wrong, we've worked pretty hard together on trying to nail a lot of what Dan is doing on stage. But again, a lot of this will just come with time and getting on stage again and again and again, and also just doing more preps. This is his first ever prep, and at 24 years old, he's won a lightweight class and come second in another lightweight qualifier, qualifying for 2 British finals, and he was sixth. He placed sixth on the scorecards. He was sixth. So he didn't place in the top 5. So therefore, on the day, he didn't get a trophy. But when they released the results after the show, he was in 6th place. So, and to be fair, in that class, so you had Stephen McDonald, who was second. He is a teen British and world champion, a junior British and world champion. He's an extremely good athlete, and he came second. You had Marcus Lee, is probably one of the best lightweights I've ever seen. Stephen Olegaki in third, who is a previous British champion. So a previous British champion, and I believe world champion, came in third. Then you had Chris Paling in fourth. Chris is a UK champion in the UKDFBA, and I believe he did very well at Worlds as well. He's insanely shredded. And then in fifth, you had Aaron, and Aaron is, for a lightweight, so heavily muscled. Just compared to the other guys, he's sort of lacking in some areas, but he's maybe a little bit in the glutes and hamstrings where he got beaten in condition-wise. But his shape and his flow, he could quite easily be a British champion lightweight in the future if everything is on the money for him. He just looked fantastic. And I know that he'd done a qualifier and was not in condition, and he really brought it down for the finals, and he just looked phenomenal. So that top 5 was insane lineup for the lightweights, and made me very much aware of how much work I've got to do. But when you see people even Macy, who came outside of the top 5 and outside of the top 6, and he's an incredible lightweight bodybuilder. It just shows you what kind of caliber the athletes were. And Dan was okay with that. For reasons that are private, he's not continuing to the UKDFBA finals, which is an absolutely correct decision for him at this period of time. But I will look forward to working with Dan in this phase into the off season, and then towards his next prep. So that is Dan Crumpton, but I'm very impressed and proud of him, and he did a superb job. Then we move into our juniors. So I had both Josh Bailey and, of course, Jack Richardson. So both of these guys I was super happy with, because they both looked on the money. I think Jack could again be a little bit fuller. We had a really tough front end of the week. He was not looking good. Physique looking very faded. I will try and post up some photos of what he looked like on Monday, and then photos now of what he looked like on Friday. So I'll try and get them both timed to the piece. But he had a big change from Monday to sort of Friday. Lots of fullness gained. Again, being moderate to conservative with his carb intake and just trying to find that middle ground of where he holds best condition without losing any detail. But I think with what we saw on Monday post-show, after he'd had quite a decent amount of food on Sunday, we really saw that we could probably push the boat out a little bit further with his carb load. So that's what we will probably be doing for the UK FBA finals, is just pushing in a bit more. So we're going to trial that out in next week's end of the week, where it's a little bit flatter, because we've already started the reverse diet for Jack. So we'll try that out and see how he fares. But yeah, overall the peak was more of a linear load for both Josh and Jack, because they were already in a state where they were pretty ready to go. So they'd had no need to stay in a fat loss element of any of the week. So just linear loaded carbohydrates throughout the week, tapered up. There was no depletion for these guys. I'm not quite sure as to whether I will ever use depletion with athletes. I know that a lot of really high level coaches and high level athletes do use depletions, but I think almost the risk reward ratio and how a lot of the athletes feel during depletion is, I don't know, almost a little bit like, what am I getting out of this? What's the main positive that I'm getting out of this? I know about super compensation from carbohydrate increases from a very flat physique, but again, the amount of carbohydrates that someone like Richardson would have to put in, or even Josh especially, would have to put in from a depleted state. Bear in mind, we loaded Josh and his baseline carbohydrates were at 350. So his carbs had never gone below 350. We had to load then 450, 500, 550. That was his load. It was like 400, 425, 450, then 500, then 550. So it was like a gradual taper to the point where he's full. So it's like, why would we then go, okay, let's do 100 grams of carbs, 100 grams of carbs, and then 1,000 to catch up on what we'd lost? So it's almost like risk versus reward. I don't really see why I'd want to do that, especially with the travel and trying to load 1,000 grams of carbs, So we will see, but there's always place and a point in my career where I'll learn, and maybe at some point I'll implement this style of peak. I've done it once with one client in the past, but never really again. So really happy with how they both looked. Obviously in the class itself, again, it was another crazy competitive class. I had the results the way they were. I thought Keith and Kudos were very, very good. I thought they were very just standout juniors, to be honest. Of course, Jack, in my opinion, was pushing them on a lot of poses. He just got basically like put at bay in the rear poses. Posteriorly, Jack suffers a little bit just because he hasn't really pulled from the floor in the last year and a half, 2 years. And he hasn't really done any hip hinging at all. He's got lots of lower back issues. So we haven't really had any hip hinge in his program. He's done no dumbbell RDLs, no deadlifts. Hence why he's just missing, that bottom bit of the back, the erectors, the thickness there. He's just missing it. And that's honestly what I think loses him places to people like Q, who... I saw him deadlifting. I think he did 180 for 20 in his off-season deadlifts, and it shows. It shows. His glutes and his entire posterior chain is phenomenal. And obviously Keith, in my opinion, it could have gone either way between Keith and Q, because Keith was very, very big, very thick, and very dense, as you can expect from someone who's pulling like 300 kilos on an RDL. You're not going to be small. So he was just very dense, very thick, and phenomenal posing. I don't know whether he was a little spilled on the day. I know he might watch this. He'll comment below as to whether he thought he was or not. I don't know whether he was maybe a slight bit spilled on the day or not, but I thought I'd seen him sharper, perhaps in some of his Instagram pics, especially through the glutes and the hams. But that's where maybe Q had him a little bit, is that through the glutes and the hams, Q was just that little bit tighter, even so from both the rear and the side poses, I had Q a little tighter in those areas. And that's maybe what sold him on the day. And of course, Q's maybe got that little bit more of a tiny waist, and it really stands out on stage. His shape is phenomenal, and that will take him places in natural bodybuilding very, very quickly. But Keith is going to go places as well, because he's just such a hard worker, and an incredible physique for his age, and the improvements he's made in basically having no real off season is again phenomenal. I lie, no real off season. He's had an off season, just a very fucking short one in realism. You know, he's had what, like four or 5 months. You know, compare it to an off season like myself, it's relatively short. But he maximizes every single day of his off seasons. That's for sure. And then again, Josh and Jack Cloth were tied on points. So I had that very close. I had Josh fourth. Of course, I'm a bit biased, but I just thought condition-wise, like, obviously condition is a requirement of bodybuilding in general, and I thought that Josh brought arguably what's the caliber of conditioning should be required on stage. And Jack was conditioned, don't get me wrong, Jack Cloth, but I thought his shape carried him through a little bit more than maybe it should have done. But I knew they were joint fourth in the end of the discussions, which I probably have, because Jack just have a lot more muscle, and at the end of the day, if it's just a conditioning show, then what is really bodybuilding? You know, I do get that argument for sure. But he has a fantastic physique. I think from his update, Jack Cloth, I think his on his Instagram, that he's maybe going to the assisted side, which is a shame, because I'd love to see him go into a men's open and demolish some people as a natural. But you know, if that's his decision, and if he chooses to go that route, then I'll look forward to following that, because I know his brother's extremely successful. I think he just became like NABBA England champion or something like that. So I know he's a very, very successful athlete and a very nice guy as well, actually. So yeah, that's that. And then finally, last but not least, the best result of the day, arguably in terms of actual pure placings, was Grace. And I was so wanting Grace to become a British champion, and I am doing everything within my power, and she's doing everything within hers to achieve it in 2 weeks' time. I was close to sort of tearing up a little bit when she did get second, because I was like, when third got called and it was between her and first, I just had it. I literally, in my head, I thought she was British champion. I was like, she's done it, because me and Molly both said she's done it, because we didn't really see the winner in the call-outs. Like, we just not noticed her. But then obviously her on her own, like when she realised who she was, she did look really good. But again, just different physiques. And I didn't really remember her and Grace being like side by side in the call-outs. But you know, obviously, you know, the judging was fair, and that was the winner they wanted on the day. And we move on, and for the UK FBA, I don't think there is much more I would like to do with Grace, apart from just not have her being sick on the weekend, because she got a cold, again like Dan, and I think that probably did have a slight effect on her look and maybe just her energy on the day. And I think that having more energy and just having more focus on the day is really important. So hopefully that will be sort of reimbursed for the UK FBA finals, and should be ready to move forwards. With Grace's peak, it was again very simple, using data from her refeeds. So we had her do 3 high days. So we started her load at 3 days out, and we just did her normal high day, then we did another normal high day, and then we did another normal high day. So she had 3 high days in a row. Usually she'd only have 2 and then a control day. But because of the travel, and then because of her look after the second high day, we just did another high day. And that really did, I think that was the best Grace I've ever seen on stage. And everyone else said that she looked fantastic as well, judges and everyone that was there. So I was really, really happy with her look. So we'll probably do a very similar thing for the UK FBA finals. And that is where I really, really, really am vying. Honestly, UK FBA finals, I really do think the team has a good chance at three British titles. And if we come back with 3, if those guys that I think can win, that will be absolutely phenomenal. But we will wait and see. In 2 weeks' time, we will know. Just over 2 weeks' time. Hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I'm going to keep it here, because I know YouTube videos, if they go over like 20 minutes, no one's going to watch them. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions at all with the peaks or anything like that. I thought I'd just do a short wrap up of how everyone did and what my thoughts are. And I will speak to you guys in the next episode on both the member site and on YouTube. All right. Peace out, guys. Thanks for watching. See you in a bit.